Welcome to This is ECP. This is the continuation of my painting In the Moment Vocals, Part 2. I began painting this piece in primer. What you see here is me covering the primer with a nice gloss white. After I'm finished painting the white, I'll be starting in on the orange, which will have a nice drip edge. This will give the painting kind of a depth to it coming off the wall when you hang it. And it's time for the fun part, painting the orange. If you see here, I'm purposely painting very close. I'm kind of taking the nozzle and just puddling the paint up. This is giving the surface some depth and this kind of texture look. Typically when you paint with spray paint, you want to have maybe about a 12 inches away, sometimes a little closer to give it a nice smooth look. I wasn't really looking for that kind of feel. I wanted to make it so it was really puddle-like, that had this kind of this weird watery texture. This also made it so if there was any I missed a place sanding or that the paint wasn't perfectly smooth, it would cover that up and make it kind of a part of it. As you can see here, I started doing the drip edge, which turned out extremely cool. Ollie Gallery in Guerneville, where this is placed, absolutely loved this look. Thought it was an absolute cool little add-on to something that was such a unique painting. This process took quite a while and just killed my finger, constantly holding the spray can nozzle down. You can see me kind of trying to babying my wrist. It started really stinging after a while. Yeah, I kind of dreamt this kind of process of making the drips off the edge. I did a painting like this years and years ago that I kind of dripped paint, but what I did, I took mineral spirits and dripped the paint, kind of melted the paint with the mineral spirits, and it removed a lot of the paint and made a drip look, kind of reverse of what I'm doing here. You can see that painting on my website, Rain Down. Now we're pretty much done getting to the last little spot. Time to let it dry. I let this dry for about 4 days. It was really thick and needed that time to dry. Here's the final product. Pretty cool. Now it's vinyl cutting time. If you see my last video, there's a new plotter here. I had to buy a new one. The new old plotter was not manufactured correctly, so I had to return it and get a new one. This one is absolutely exceptional. If you ever are in the market for a plotter, I really suggest a Roland. This is the Roland GX24. And it's just a workhorse. Very rare do I get errors on it. I had my first plotter was a Roland CX500. and that lasted 13 years, and that thing was bulletproof. So these are pretty good plotters. Now it's time to lay the vinyl down. I didn't bother doing the weeding and taping on this. You've seen it in my last videos. If you want to see how I do it, look back at the last videos, and I give a little bit more in depth on what I do. This is it's kind of mundane, not too exciting. People get more excited, I think, about the laying down of the vinyl. They get to see what the product's going to actually look like. When I'm in the sign business, people just gawk at me when I lay down vinyl on windows or on their car. So I figured I'd leave this part in because it is kind of something that people like to watch. We'll be going into fast mode pretty soon. If you're wondering what kind of squeegee I'm using there, it is a felt squeegee. It's usually made for doing wraps on cars. It conforms to edges very well and gives minimal bubbles. It's one of the best type of squeegees to use if you are a pro at it. The Ridgid squeegees are more geared toward glass and non-undulating curves. But I use this on everything. It's one of my favorite squeegees. It's easy on the hand, and if you're doing a lot of squeegeeing, it helps with the fatigue. And here we go on the hyper speed. I'll come back to you when we start doing the next paint job. I figured I'd come back real quick because I'm about to do a fairly large layout of vinyl, and I'm going to have to splice in a lot of different panels just because I do only have a 24-inch plotter. My old plotter was 68 inches and could handle this entire piece that I'm doing, but it died a couple years ago, and this one I just need to panel things in. If you see, I just laid that over the piece of paper so it would stick to the backing paper. The reason I did this so I didn't have to pull more vinyl off of the painting. Just made my job a little easier. So I'll get back to you when I start painting. to start painting. The first coat here is just plain old black. I'm going to do the same technique that I did with the orange. I'm going to have the nozzle extremely close to the surface, and I'm also going to start bleeding over in certain edges. As you can see, I kind of am making a drip coming off the edge of that microphone stand. And I'm just kind of giving it a quick coat and making nice puddles so it keeps with the theme of the puddly paint. I've been asked a number of times how I developed this technique. I have a coworker actually to thank for that. Back in 2008, he started doing some kind of similar work, but he wasn't using the plotter. He was just using vinyl to cut it out by hand and doing a little bit of a stencil work. And I kind of looked at that and went, wow, I can actually take my software like Adobe Illustrator and my sign software and develop this new technique that I don't see very often or at all in art. I've taken this technique into my printmaking and it has transformed it to something that I honestly have yet to ever see still to this day. And I've been doing that since 2000, I think about 2010, 9, something around there. And nobody still has done anything like what I've been doing. Sorry about the jerkiness of the camera. I'm actually painting this in the middle of our field because I can't do it in the shop. It's pretty stinky, so I'm kind of walking over gopher holes and undulating ground, so sometimes it gets a little bit tricky to walk around things while you're looking into a camera. And pretty soon it's time for what they say, the money shot. This is when we pull the mask and you get to really see what is going to happen. This is this is one of my favorite parts of doing this technique, because sometimes it is an absolute disaster. You have to repaint the entire piece because the paint pull, the vinyl is kind of aggressive. That's kind of why I let this thing dry for so long. And sometimes I get a little impatient and I pull the mask too early, or I lay down the mask too early, and the paint actually peels off with it. This one was such a big piece, I had to temper my impatientness and wait for it, which was it was quite difficult sometimes, because sometimes I get really excited about doing some of this stuff. You can see that it's starting to come out to a really cool design, and this is really definitely the most exciting part of this type of stencil work. Here you can see a little bit more on the actual details and the dripness from the paint, where I'm masking off certain areas where I don't want the drips coming. couldn't tell before, these are stars. I've had a number of people ask me about the waste I do when it comes to a lot of this vinyl. It is wasteful, and I do take that into consideration. A lot of the vinyl that I use is lower grade. I've gotten it for free, or a sign company was getting out of the business. Typically, I try to use a lower grade vinyl, and whenever possible, I try to throw it in the recycle bin to try to get our recycling companies to actually start recycling this material. It is fully recyclable. It's just there's not a lot of money in it for the recycle companies. So if you can maybe call your local recycling company and say, hey, start taking this stuff and start finding ways to reuse it, it'd be great. I'd love to do that. I'd love to hear people actually stepping up to do that. I've tried, but the recycling companies kind of stonewall me and just keep on telling me they can't recycle, that's under-recyclable. I think we all know that everything in this world is recyclable. There isn't anything that you can't reuse. Hence, a lot of my paintings, I've taken paintings that somebody just wanted to throw aside or donate to the Goodwill, and I've reused the canvas. This piece was not recycled materials. I didn't have the materials on hand to do it, and usually I recycle old sign panels and make pieces of artwork out of that. You can see my little puppy in the back. That's Lucy. Always hanging around me. The weeding does get a little tedious, and sometimes this gets to the point where you can actually damage the painting itself with your razor blade that you're popping out pieces of vinyl that are your mask. There's a few spots here that you can't see that I dug down a little too deep, and you see primer at the bottom, so I'm gonna later on have to put little dabs of paint in there to fix those. Pulling the mask on this took me about an hour to do, and I still didn't get all of it, so down the road I found little pieces here and there that I had to pull. It can be really hard to see the mask that's under the paint, especially if it is a thicker paint. And since I did puddle this, some of the mask has been hidden, and it needed to dry a little bit more to get thinner so that all the solvents dried out of it. Now with the mask fully removed, in the moment vocals. If you like what you see, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching.